Welcome back to the podcast where we celebrate innovation for a happy planet. We've had a number of East African women on this podcast who are guided by dual missions of both sustainable business and supporting women. None, however, has spoken quite so candidly about the challenges faced by Kenyan women in the seafood industry as today's guest, Proscovia Alando. Proscovia is a Kenyan entrepreneur who wears many hats. She's founder of Samaky Hub, an organization that empowers women and youth in Africa's aquaculture sector by offering strategic planning, operational guidance, and marketing support to their ventures. She is also an African Food Fellow, the Kenyan Program Manager for the Irish Aquaculture Venture Hub Hatch Blue, and a writer for the U.S. industry rag, The Fish Site. Proscovia is looking to grow the African aquaculture market to meet local demand, all while boosting safety and opportunity for women and youth. But let's hear it from Proscovia. Welcome to the podcast, Proscovia.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here and share my experience.
I want to unpack this whole wearing many hats phenomenon, but right now I want to hear about aquaculture and sustainability in Africa. Where is it? What are people interested in? What are you growing? Tell me about it.
There's a huge opportunity. We have enough water resources, natural resources, enough, I would say, factors of production. We have people willing, able, and hungry to make an impact or create employment, generate some sort of food with a growing population. And on the other hand, there are all these challenges in terms of if you want to establish a business in that sector, there are barriers to entry, maybe financial aspect of it. And looking at also with the abundant water resources that we have, previously we've relied on fishing, but now we can't completely rely on fishing because of overfishing and climate change. So looking at, there is opportunity, but there is also challenges. How do we balance this? Looking at the opportunity for the people who are already trying to venture into fish farming sustainably, how then can we support them and help them ensure that they're sustainable and profitable in the long run, and they actually meet the target that is relevant for the African sector in terms of providing protein for the growing population, improving the livelihoods of the people, and also, especially for me, the women and youth that are involved in the industry are really benefiting from that.
Yeah. Now, you're located in Kenya.
So at the moment, my primary location is in Kenya, but I've worked with stakeholders from East Africa, from South Africa, West Africa, from Zambia. So I would say I work with a lot of stakeholders from Africa, and the main goal of Samaky Hub is to actually capture the whole African region.
Very good. And so what are some of the people growing? What does the aquaculture market look like?
In East Africa, the major species that is being grown is tilapia. And we also have trout, we have catfish, we have abalone in South Africa. We also have seaweed, which is predominant in Tanzania. We also have shrimp, prawn, we have oysters. So we have a variety of species, but the predominant one is tilapia.
Are your aquaculturists targeting the African markets, or are they looking to export? What does the business model look like?
Yeah, majority of them and majority of the ones that I work with are targeting the African market. And we find that even now, with the current level of production, they're still not able to meet the demand.
Wow.
And for some regions, we see a lot of import. So import could be international, maybe import from China to Africa, or it could be regional, maybe import from Uganda to Kenya, or from Kenya to a different location. So we see a lot of that also happening because the local demand is still very high and not met due to some challenges in the industry.
Is this land-based or pan aquaculture? Is it, or it's a mix?
In East Africa, we have the Lake Victoria that borders the three countries, Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. We have a lot of cage fish farming happening there. And then if you go to South Africa, it's mostly abalone farming. And for that, it's more of a RAS system. And then also we find that in Uganda and also Kenya, we have some sort of pond farming, so small-scale ponds that are being used. We also have a few examples of recirculating aquaculture system happening in other parts. Yeah.
We all want to, and maybe I'm doing it too, put Africa in one big box, but I'm well aware that you are a continent of many, many countries and many different cultures. And actually, how do you get around that in your writing and your communication and when dealing with Hatch and investors?
One way I think I'm able to do, especially what I'm doing with Samaky Hub and wearing many hats, as you mentioned, is networking. So I noticed early on that the industry in East Africa or in Kenya or in Africa is very young. There still needs to be a lot of development and research, collaboration and partnerships, and to move away from copy-paste, like from the Western to Africa, and actually provide an African solution to an African problem. And the only way we can do this is by sharing knowledge and connecting with people who maybe have done it before, who have an idea, and try to see how then, what is the best way to implement this? Is this something that has been done before? What were the challenges and opportunities? So for me, positioning myself in a place where I'm able to network with diverse stakeholders across the value chain, from input suppliers to primary producers to market to investors to support organizations. I'm able to share my voice and also to learn from them and also to work with them in a collaborative manner based on what I have experienced or what I've heard from other people.
Tell me more about the women and youth programs that you're running and how they work. I believe there's a tradition in seaweed and some of these other aquacultures for women to be working in these industries.
Yes. So at the moment, especially with Hatch Blue, one of the initiatives was the Blue Venture Builder program. And for that program, the idea was to empower women and youth in Africa who had solutions for the blue economy, business ideas, or maybe they're at the prototype stage, or maybe they are 1 or 2 years in business. How then would we support them to refine their business model and become investor ready? Because some of them were coming into the program with the idea stage. So this is very common in Africa. You find that you have plenty of ambitious youth or ambitious talent, but there's always lacking in mentorship or financial support to actually realize that goal. And then on the women aspect, you find that because of the cultural barriers, it's challenging for them to actually run a profitable business or a sustainable business. Then how do we ensure that it's easier for them to run their business and get a return out of it?
What are some of the obstacles?
So in Kenya and myself, the reason why I'm really keen on advocating for women and youth, initially my initial business idea was to actually practice the actual fish farming. And I had 3 goals: to create employment, to provide food, and also to conserve the environment. I wanted a sustainable business. But then going to actually look into getting started with a business, setting up an actual business, it was quite challenging. So one, because I was young, it was difficult to get enough resources or capital to start the business. Yeah. And then because I'm a woman, in our culture, you can't really own land, or you can't inherit land as a woman. So even if I was saying like I have an asset, I could use it as collateral for loan, it was impossible because I didn't have any assets that I could use to get a loan. And then also the way the financial, like in a home dynamic, the man is always the leader of the house, and the woman comes second to the man. So the man makes all decisions. So it's quite challenging to like sometimes be the sole decision or the lead decision maker in a house. Yeah.
And so the same is for a business, presumably.
Yes, mostly.
So do women tend to hire women so that they can circumvent that problem if they have a business?
Some of them do hire women, others hire men, because In many cases that I've had and I've also experienced, you find that a woman is the founder of a company and they've hired maybe a man as part of the business. When they go somewhere, maybe in a meeting or in a conference or in an event, the culture that people are used to is that the man is the leader. So the people will then address the man, even if the man is like an employee to the woman. So sometimes women use that as an advantage, or other times they just hire other women.
That sounds very expensive and very complicated, but I can see that. You're really up against a lot if you're a woman trying to start a business in Kenya.
So previously it was quite challenging for women to even have the opportunity to make financial decisions in a household. But now, because of a lot of advocacy, what we are finding is there are financial packages or supports that are directly targeting women. And with that, you find that some of them work and others do not work. So I'll give an example. There was a program in Kenya that was targeting to empower women in aquaculture. And one of the reasons for this is because predominantly we know that men are the people who usually go fishing. Women in some communities are not allowed to go fishing traditionally. Okay. So the men would go fishing and then they would come and sell the fish they caught to the women, and then the women then would go trade the fish in the market. Now it became challenging because of overfishing, you find that the fish that the men were catching are limited compared to the amount of women who want to buy the fish. So there was a point where the women had to pay twice because there is limited supply and most women want the fish. They pay twice, one with their body and second with financial means. So there was a program that was brought to say, the way we can empower women is to have them have cages where they can farm fish. As much as they're not allowed to go fishing, they can farm fish and harvest fish and sell fish. So for that, they needed to have like a community engagement to engage with the community and tell them, we would like to set up cages for women in this community. Will you work with us? Will you support them? For some communities, they said yes. For other communities, the men said no. We don't want women to own the cages. We either want us also to own the cages, or if you put the cages without our approval, we'll either destroy the cages or steal the fish. So for some communities, it did not work.
So you're helping people build these farms, and what are you seeing so far? I mean, are they getting more financing now through all these efforts? Is this making an impact? Are you happy to see change?
Yes, I'm definitely seeing a lot of positive feedback. And one of the key positive feedback for me is especially from young women or young people seeing the work that I'm doing and saying that they really value what I'm doing because in a way I'm a voice for them, for the challenges that they are facing. And then also seeing for some or most of the projects that I have been involved in, there have been positive outcomes. And even for the recent program, the Blue Venture Builder program with Hatch Blue, we started it in May and concluded in October. And we're looking for a way to have more of those programs in Africa. So you find that within 6 months of the program, we have at least one company that was able to go from ideation to actually active sales, and they're generating revenue and seeing this impact of these people, just seeing that it's possible, it can happen if you have the right guidance, the right resources, the right support, the right tools. That is really great. And then also with a lot of feedback from my feature on the fish site, I even had someone reach out to me yesterday about someone I had featured and they wanted to talk to them. Maybe it's a potential opportunity for this person. So just seeing all this feedback is really great to see.
Yeah. And so it seems like it's really important to reach out beyond Africa for the resources, maybe some structure and cash. I mean, is cash coming in? For a blue economy to thrive, people need to use more sustainable products. But which products? And will consumers actually adopt them? Innovators like you are hustling to figure this out. Spark number 9 can tell you if there's demand for your product.
Spark markets your product before it's built using online advertising so you launch smarter. Have a big idea? Vet it with Spark before you build. Visit Spark online at www.sparkno9.com or find them on LinkedIn.
I would say cash is coming in one way or another. But then it's just the start, and I'm hoping that more cash will come in. But at least there's some traction there.
That's very interesting. So the farm that got started out of the Hatch Blue, was it a woman or a man owner of that farm?
Yeah, so the women are actually the majority shareholders, but they're also men in part of the founding team.
And what are they making?
So at the moment, their business model is structured in form of like a marketplace, because the way they came together, we had 5 different individuals with different ideas, different business models come together from input to primary production to market to logistics. So they came together to form one company, and these are the services they're offering to clients, like a marketplace, because sometimes you find that a farmer would farm fish, and then at the end of the month when they're harvesting, maybe tomorrow or today is when they say, I'm harvesting tomorrow. They didn't really have ready market for that. So sometimes when middlemen come, because they know like some of these farmers, they don't have a cold storage facility, they don't have anywhere to take the fish, they'll sell to them at a throwaway price. So what this platform is doing is actually providing a ready market, onboarding, like taking all the fish from them and giving them a market for that, and also supplying input to the farmers. Maybe you might need feed, you might need an equipment. They make it easier instead of you working in all that process to maybe import or get an equipment from one region to another. They make that easier for you.
Is traceability a big issue in Africa? Is that something people are thinking about? Just thinking about the comings and goings of fish and quality control in a marketplace like that.
So traceability is actually a big issue, and it's something that we have already started looking at and talking about and discussing. And it's something that needs more focus, because we find that a few times, both locally, regionally, and internationally, we've had a case where fish that was not fit for consumption has reached market. So sometimes it could be from a local polluted river, or it could have been imported like a low quality or maybe not good for consumption. So there's still a lot of work that needs to be done in that aspect. That's something we need to focus on.
Yeah. Well, here too. Rest assured.
Okay.
A bad oyster has definitely hit the market. Hopefully never any of mine, but so I want to hear more about you and how you manage all of this. Like, how did you, as this sort of multitasking solopreneur, although you've built a business, so you're no longer a solopreneur, but tell me about that journey and your pivot, because you wanted to grow fish and now you're helping other people grow fish.
Yes. So I remember actually back in 2020, in 2019, that's when I completed my master's studies and I was ready to establish a business. But before then, like since 2014, that was in my second year of my undergraduate studies, I was already involved in the aspect of fish and training. I used to work with the county government. We got training from the county government we had formed a youth group at the university. So with this youth group, it was called Aquafisheries Youth Group. So the main goal was to train farmers and also gain training. When we went to the government office, they were very open to us. They welcomed us, they offered us training. And when they would go to offer like extension services, they would also take us with them. So we learned from them. And then I started building my experience from that time, my skills from that time, my network from that time. So it's been almost a decade of collecting experience and skills and networks. So when it reached 2020, when I wanted to establish my farm and it could not happen, I went back to the drawing board and I was like, why is it not happening? And of course, it was because one, it was very expensive. And I was like, why is it expensive for me? So one of the reasons was the expensive part was because of the protein aspect that is used to formulate feed. So I found out that feed was highly expensive. And with research, I found out about the black soldier fly insects, and they were saying it could reduce the cost of production by up to 37%. So I told myself, let me go and learn about the black soldier fly insect. I went, learned about the black soldier fly insect. I became a co-founder of that company called Resect. So for that, we worked with that for some time, training farmers, establishing facilities for the black soldier fly insects and selling product. And then after that, we decided to go our separate ways. So with this, I was still building skills, gaining networks, and gaining connections. So it reached a point where I noticed a lot of people were reaching out to me with questions about my industry, my experience, because I used to write a lot on LinkedIn about the challenges, the opportunities, and what I'm facing. And so I told myself I could charge to answer these questions. I could turn into a consulting firm. Yeah. So that's how I became a service offering business. And then for the services, because of the huge network that I had, it was easier for people to reach out. And the experience that I have gathered for the past 10 years, something that maybe would take someone with no experience, it would take them maybe 3 months. It can take me maybe 1 week or 3 weeks to complete that. So then I'm able to work with multiple stakeholders and leverage from my experience and my network to make it actually work efficiently. So I normally say it's just a day job, 9 to 5, but with different multiple people, but doing the same thing that I have experience in.
Yeah. Well, you get a wonderful view of everything, have to interact with so many different stakeholders.
Yeah, it's very, I would say it's very new and very unique, because sometimes I get to hear from a different perspective that I would not have considered or even thought about. And then also just trying to see how are other people thinking differently from me? Is there a place we can come in the middle, or is their idea making sense more than what I was thinking? So working with diverse stakeholders actually gives me a platform to know what's happening in these different regions. Because if you look at the food systems or anything really, everything is usually connected. And the challenge, or what has been happening before, is organizations working in silos. But then if there is an opportunity for organization to collaborate and continuously collaborate and share ideas, it would be easier to avoid some problems or some challenges moving forward. Yeah. So I'm trying to bridge that gap.
Where do you see this going? What's the end game? 5 years, what is this sort of maritime economy going to look like in Kenya?
Yeah, so I'm hoping that within the next few years, I'm hoping we can achieve it sooner, but the end goal is to have a resilient aquaculture industry in Africa that promotes healthy livelihoods, that ensures food security, because we've heard time and again, Africa is rich in resources, but there's poverty, there's hunger. So how can aquaculture be at the forefront of ensuring food security? And then also the third aspect is, how can women and the youth in aquaculture in Africa actually have better livelihoods, make better profits, and have a better living condition? Their livelihoods is improved throughout their lives, yeah.
Do you think that through your actions and building up the empowering women in aquaculture, that could begin to have a positive effect on women's rights generally?
I believe so. Because one of the things we normally hear, especially, I would say, sometimes in terms of gender-based violence, people asking, why didn't you leave? Most people, they say, I didn't have a place to go, or I didn't have anyone to go to. So I'm thinking if women are empowered to have their own resources, they'll be able to make better decisions that are good for themselves and also maybe for their children. And the other way that I'm looking at it is in terms of, when you look at a woman who is better empowered, is knowledgeable, and they're actually doing something to raise their community or raise their children, most of the time, the woman is the one who bears the child. If they know, like, it's nutritious to eat healthy protein, or this kind of food is good for my health and for the health of the baby, they're going to bring up children who are healthy, and also children who are well taken care of, even from an early age. Will not have malnourished children coming up, and then it's going to be a problem in the future. So there's a lot that can happen when we empower women in the community.
How is climate change impacting the activities of these fish farmers and seaweed farmers?
One thing I have actually seen in seaweed farming, and it's actually an ongoing research, because of changes in water temperature, you find that the places that were once suitable for seaweed farming are no longer suitable for seaweed farming, or people get a lot of losses from the seaweed they're farming because of that, and that means loss of livelihood. And looking at, especially in Tanzania, where predominantly 90% of the seaweed farmers are women, and if they're affected, they don't have a different source of livelihood, and they have children to take care of, so it's going to be detrimental for them. In the aspect of fish farming, we're seeing, especially in the Lake Victoria region, and I've seen this in other regions as well, there is some occurrence of fish kills, or you find sometimes someone had cage fish farming, they wake up one day, all the fish are dead. You don't know why. Like, it's difficult to predict when the upwelling would happen compared to previously where it was predictable. So these are some of the impacts I see for the two. Yeah.
So you are a serial entrepreneur and you have many mandates. It sounds like a lot to juggle. Can you share some advice for other entrepreneurs, how to get things going and get projects off the ground?
Mm-hmm. One thing I would say is stick to the mission. Like, what is your why? Why are you doing it? If you are clear on the why, then how are you going to be doing it? So for me, it was okay for me to pivot when my first idea did not work. So also be open to pivot when your idea is not working, or to get feedback from people who have done it before or who know best for you. And then the other thing is seek help. Because sometimes you can do everything by yourself. When you're facing a lot of failure and a lot of challenges, or you're putting in a lot of work, there's a time I was putting in a lot of work and I wasn't seeing any result happening. But then I remember that sometimes it's not about the results that you want to see, but how far have you come personally? And then eventually when the results started coming in, it was just an overflow of results. And I was like, oh, so it was actually in the making. So like, be patient, be resilient. If you need to pivot, seek help when you need. And make sure that you're targeting something that's close to your heart. If it's impact for your community, for yourself, any kind of anything that is close to your heart that you would be doing even if there was no incentive. Like, in what area can you be a leader and make change even without a title?
Yeah. One thing that has struck me that not a lot of people have spoken about is the power of the pen. You have a proverbial pen. Everybody's using a keyboard now. But I'm impressed by the power of these articles that you're writing and the ability of a really low-tech activity to create powerful change. And could you just speak to that for a minute?
Yeah, so, and I would say one thing about maybe even for the article or for running a business itself is when you're doing something, there might be someone who is interested in what you're doing, but they don't know that you exist or they don't know that you're doing it. So one of the things is visibility. How can you ensure visibility for yourself? So for these companies, one of the idea was they're doing this. Maybe there are people who don't know what they're doing, who have a solution or some kind of support that can help them? How can I show visibility for them to ensure that they have a platform? Some of these farmers, they're very rural. They do not use technology. So also getting to them was like a challenge, but they're doing something impactful for them and for their community. So the main goal was to give them visibility and show them as they are, and try to leave it for the people who matter to see that and to reach out to them.
By nature, I think entrepreneurs are optimistic, but we're all working against this ticking time bomb, it seems sometimes, of climate change. How are you feeling? Are you feeling optimistic?
I would say I'm feeling optimistic. So previously, if you could have asked me, I would have said there's no hope for us, we are doomed. But now I'm feeling optimistic because a lot of people that I have worked with or have had an opportunity to interact with are very passionate and are very keen on driving positive change and advocating for climate justice. I actually took a course on climate justice recently.
Nice.
So there are a lot of people who are trying to be cautious on matters climate change and trying to actively find a solution for climate change, even in their own personal lifestyles. So me being in this network of these people who are optimistic and really working day in, day out to actually make an impact makes me feel better, because I know that we are doing what we can with what we have. And then another thing that actually I normally joke about is, I know we can't survive without the planet, but the planet can't survive without us. So it's okay. Like, if I'm doing this, if the planet is okay and someone did something and then I'm no longer here, at least the planet is okay. It will be okay whether we are here or not. So that gives me a peace of mind.
This has been another episode of Happy Planet. All information you need on Proscovia and her business can be found in our show notes. Thank you once again for listening. Please follow Happy Planet wherever you tune in and leave us a rating and review. Happy Planet was reported and hosted by me, Abigail Carroll. I'm also the executive producer. Composer George Brandel Egloff created our theme music. Learn more about my work and get in touch by visiting happyplanetpodcast.com.